Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. In this video, I promise to show you everything about FL Studio's piano roll that you need to know. So this is the FL Studio Bible series right here, BusyWorksBeats.com. I'm going to guide you step by step through FL Studio so you can become a master of FL Studio when you know nothing about it. So firstly, we're going to start with the settings of the piano roll. If you go to the top left, we're going to go to where it says View, and I would highly recommend you guys put your keyboard style on Modern and key labels on all. Without this, the left side, you're not going to see the keys, and it's going to make it really frustrating learning music theory and how to write melodies. Trust me. That's, we can get into the philosophy about that. Nextly, we can add what's called ghost channels, and I usually keep my note grid highlights on, and everything else should be on by default. Okay, so that's where we're going to start. Now, if you ever mess up the background of your colors with messing with themes, you could always go to the view, go to where it says grid color, hit the D to restore it back to default, in the case that you ever change your background and can't figure it out. So those are the settings I would highly recommend. Now, the next settings are, workflows for producers. So for example, I'm going to offset this on purpose. If you highlight notes, you can hit Control, left click to highlight, hit Alt and left or on your keyboard or right on your keyboard to move stuff around in nudges. So Alt is the nudge button in FL Studio. Now, if you want to quantize stuff, let's hit Control Q. Now, Control Q quantizes to what's called a snap to grid. So here, this little magnet right here is called snap to grid. Snap to grid is just like a default measurement that you want to write in because you don't want to look at everything at microscopic level sometimes. So I keep mine on 1/2 beat. When I get more granular, I'll go to 1/4 beat. So here's my rule. This is not a general rule, just trying to save you headaches. And if you don't know me, I'm Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. We train over 1 million producers around the world. So we're going to work with Drake, Kanye West, Post Malone, Ariana Grande, French Montana, Young Thug, YG, Polo G, Lil Baby, Trippie Redd, K. Dot, or Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, on and on and on. So a lot of folks. So what we're going to do is change our snap to grid to 1/2 beat. This is really good for tempos above about 120. Once you start getting into halftime, you want to go to about a 1/2 beat. If you're in regular tempo, like regular, like old school hip hop, everything below about 120, I'd recommend just changing this to 1/4 beat. So it depends on your tempo, but those are the two measurements I use. So what I'm saying is your snap to grid will snap to that measurement, okay? So what this means is if you want to make triplets, let's say you have this 808, let me turn this up a little bit. And let's say at the ending, you want some kind of triplet. What we're going to do is change our snap to grid to 1/3 beat and then add notes. Okay, so that triplet is 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, very different. So what we want to do is, let's say you have quarter timing and triplet timing and you go to hit Control Q, it's going to mess up your triplet timing. See how it just snapped to the wrong grid? So what you want to do is hit Control, left click to highlight all the notes that you know are quarter timing, hit Control Q, snap it to your snap to grid. Change your snap to grid back to 1/3 beat, highlight your triplet area and hit Control Q, and it will quantize it to the triplet and not to the quarter. So that way you don't have to like manually line stuff up. It takes a lot of time. So that's for all my hip hop heads out there. And there's a couple hotkeys. Again, Control Q is quantize. Alt Q does the same thing. It's just a little bit different. You could load up templates and you have a little more control. I don't use this one as much. I use them kind of interchangeably, really. And nextly, to select things, you're going to hit Control, left click to highlight, hit Control Shift to deselect stuff. So let's say I only want to select, the beginning and ending of this 808 for some reason. Okay, and I don't want to delete the middle. I can delete the middle, hit delete on your keyboard if you're on PC, hit Control X if you're on Mac. That will get rid of the notes, okay? So that will deselect these so that they're unaffected. Another thing which I just thought of in the piano roll is, let's say your velocity, let's say you're playing something on your MIDI controller and your 808s are just all over the place. And it kind of messes up your groove. You grab this ellipses right here, change your control to the note velocity, and then you're going to hit Alt, left click to restore the velocity. Okay, you could hit Shift and left click to create linear. This is glitchy because I'm on the beta, but you could hit Shift to basically do these like linear fades like this. You could also right click to do the same thing, but Shift keeps these all at the same value. Whereas right click, you could create a fade. Okay, but Shift doesn't do that. I'm in the beta, so it's glitching right now, but trust me guys, that's what Shift does. Okay, now let's get into like the cool stuff, which is changing colors. Also, there's so much to tell you guys about the piano roll, but I'm only going to give you stuff that real beat makers use. All the like other tools, just always remember, as a beat maker, as a musician, your goal with music is to create from your intent. All these tools are just to help you get to your intent. Don't let the tools drive what you do unless you're like trying to experiment, okay? So let's go to Keyscape in this case, and we're going to mute the 808. Okay, let's go in here. So the piano roll is kind of where producers live as far as making the music. And the playlist is where you go to add the puzzle pieces. So if you're confused about patterns versus playlist, think of the piano roll as a place to add patterns. And you combine these patterns in what's called the playlist. So the patterns are like puzzle pieces and the playlist is like putting the puzzle together, okay, for arrangement. So let's get into changing colors. All right, if you want to make FL Studio more fun, make sure you go in the top left and right click. Do not left click. Left click does something completely different. These are called MIDI channels, and I'll explain that later. For now, we're just going to right click, and then we can change the color of our notes. So let's make our notes like a pink color, and let's make them pretty bright. And now when we draw in the actual piano roll, the notes are a different color. So what I can do here, so what's happening is my velocity in FL Studio, it keeps all the values from the last MIDI note that you laid. So if the last MIDI note had a low velocity, this note will have a low velocity. If it was pan left, this will be pan left. So very important that to restore these values, just click on your note, hit Alt, and make sure you restore these values. Sometimes the panning might be over here. You don't know because it doesn't show you by default. So you're thinking that everything's cool, but a sound might be panned to the right and you can't figure it out. That's why. So hit Alt, switch these tabs out, and then just left click to reset. Usually it's either the velocity or the panning that people usually mess with. Okay, so now we have this note. Let's say we recorded a note, but it's like kind of there, but it's not all the way there. So I'm hitting Alt and left clicking the edge to kind of zoom in, or excuse me, to nudge the note further backward and forward. And let's say I want it to, oops, let's say I want this note to go all the way out. What we're going to do is hit Control L to fill that gap. So again, FL remembers the length of the note, the velocity, the panning, and all the other parameters. So when I add another note, it also doesn't go all the way. So if you're drawing in notes like we usually do, just hit Control L and it will fill out these notes. Now let me show you another thing which I just thought of. Let's say you're recording on your MIDI controller and it does something like that. And you're like, why is FL doing that? It's because for whatever reason in FL, if notes overlap, they mess up. The quick way to do this is hit Control left click on the note on the left side. It will highlight all the notes of that one specific note. I think you could do multiple too if you drag. Okay, so just hit Control to highlight that specific note. Hit Alt L. This is the articulator tool. And make sure only with selection is turned on. And that will basically prevent overlaps. There's what's called a piano script, and I'll show you guys what that does. But until we get to that point, I'm not going to like jump ahead. Okay, so now the notes don't overlap. Okay, so that's how you change the colors to make it look cool. And again, if you want to change the background, I would not recommend changing the background, but to each his own. You can also go to the top left, go to View, and then mess with the grid color. There are themes in FL too, so I don't want to like go through everything about FL, but you guys can customize the colors for FL. Now again, if you mess up, go to the top left, let's go to View, Grid Color, and restore this back to default. Just hit D. And you could also do the same thing with the notes, right click, okay, to get to the color picker, and then hit D to restore back to its original value. Just for those who want to know, I keep all my colors just stock because it helps your eye identify stuff way faster over time. So that's what I do, but that's just me. Now let's talk about scale lock. This is a new feature in FL Studio. I forget the exact version they came out with this in, but if yours doesn't have this, it's because you didn't update FL. So up here, it says snap to scale. We're going to click this on. Now you can right click to select the settings for this. So firstly, sometimes it's not on snap to scale. It's just on scale. Smash the like button. I need more oxygen. Yeah, this is taking a lot of my oxygen, so I need more oxygen. Just smash the like button. Okay, so what we're going to do is right click, and then you could select what's called a scale. A scale is just a sequence of notes somebody likes. Okay, let's say major and minor are going to be your two most favorable scales. So minor natural and major. So let's go minor. We want to right click on minor. So we have the scale as a sequence of notes. The root key is where do these sequences of notes start. So let's do C and then minor natural. And so now your grid will change to where it will highlight all of the notes in C minor. It will highlight them. Now, I would not recommend you guys get used to that because it will throw off what you do in the future as far as moving faster. I just keep mine on black notes. I don't even have this feature on. But for those who need it, you know, I understand. Okay. So what we want to do now is right click and make sure we have snap to scale as well turned on. And now what you could do is just left click, and you can't go out of key. Now that's a good and bad, okay? Because going out of key sometimes is what creates genre. And I'll quickly show you, it's not a music theory lesson today. So we're just gonna add a note, and if you add more notes, notice it's skipping certain notes. It's skipping all the notes that aren't in this specific scale. So it helps you stay in key, so to speak. But again, hip hop was built off of going out of key. So it's a good and a bad thing at the same time. So what you can do to make your first chord, for example, left click a note in here, skip every other note of the scale, I should say, skip every other note of the highlighted notes. And then now you have nice chords. So this is how you build chords. Now let's say I want to trigger this chord again. We can grab what's called the slice tool. You could hit shift left click to do a vertical slice. Now let's say there's an ending that you just don't want. What you could do is shift and right click to delete stuff to the right. Now the way this works is that if I slice in the middle, it just deletes whatever's shorter. Okay, so don't think that this is a way to just delete stuff. This deletes what's shorter. And I wish I had an example, but basically sometimes you could use this. Let me show you guys something here. So let's say you overlap like this, and then these are all different lengths like this, something like that. It might be a normal recording. If you shift right click, you'll get rid of all those extra tails that go over the bar, because what happens is if we go over this little bar, FL keeps going for another bar until it repeats. Okay, so we don't want that to happen. So we hit shift right click to delete the excess. Okay, so that's just a little quick tool you guys can use. So I'm trying to give you realistic things that you guys would actually use. So that's scale lock. I don't use it. I'm just giving you guys the tools in the case that you want to use it, but I can understand why people use it. I'm trying to follow my notes here. Nextly is the velocity and note repeat. So what we can do here, let's say we want to give this a more realistic velocity. Without piano roll scripts, they're called, we can do this by hand. Let's hit Alt-R. Turn off the pattern mode, turn on levels, and then mess with the velocity here. Hit accept. And it makes a stale piano sound more realistic because now you're playing each note at a subtly different volume, and it makes it more realistic as if you're playing it by hand. Okay, now let's say that's cool, but it's a little too loud as far as the articulation, meaning I like the velocities, but the piano's just playing too hard as if I'm slamming on the keys. You could hit Alt-X and then pull down your multiply value. Basically what this does is it keeps the same distances between the velocities, but it just pulls them down relatively. So if you have a soft E piano, you might play a lower velocity. If you have a hard grand piano, you might play these higher. So that's a way to preserve the relative distance between the velocities without it sounding artificial. There's another feature. This is a new feature though, in the latest version of FL. You might even need the beta for this. So I'm just showing you guys what's possible. I'm not telling you what to do. There's a note repeat in FL Studio. So let me go back to my drum and let's switch to the 808 and let's unmute it. So let's say on this last 808, we want this to kind of have a stutter to it. So firstly, whenever you draw stuff in the channel rack, which is this area here, the notes show up the notes show up as these little blips, and these are not the same. I don't even know how they define these, but these little blips are not like regular notes. They kind of drag out for as long as the next note hits. That's a little confusing to demonstrate. So what I'm going to do is just show you what I would do in this case. I would drag this out. And let's say I want this to stutter. I'm going to highlight this, hit Control to highlight. We're going to go down to the bottom. Again, if you don't see this, grab the ellipses here. Go to the left Control. Let's go to where it says Note Repeat. and then we're going to pull up the value. So what we're doing essentially is chopping this note up. The more you pull this up, the more chops it adds. And then what we could do is just shorten the note, hit Alt, left click to make it shorter, but it still, you know, contains those chops. So let me show you where velocity might matter, especially for like more of a Philly bounce. You're going to click on the left side, go to note velocity, turn down this other 808. See how it bounces now? So velocity does matter when it comes to producing. There was something else I was going to show you guys, but I completely forgot. So we're going to move to the next topic, which is called pitch bends. Now I do have a MIDI controller, but I'm assuming you guys don't. And so what pitch bends allow us to do is just that, bend the pitch of a sound. So what I'll do is I'll make this a regular 808. Oh, here's what I was going to show you guys. Okay, so let's say this is more for like hip hop people. Let's change our snap to grid to 1/2 beat. And let's say we want the 808 to stop or become truncated or cut short. Let's say I want to go dun, dun, boom, and I want it to mute. Like right here, I want it to mute. What we could do is highlight this note, go to our control, go to note velocity, pull this note all the way down to 0, and it will basically override the note before and just mute this note out. So this is like adding mutes to your music. Also helpful for like 808s when they ring out and they have this long ring out, you could just copy a muted note, put it to the end of your pattern and make sure that this shows in the playlist. So basically it'll look something like this. I'm not going to go in about the playlist, but it'll look more like this than if you drew it like this. The 808 will just keep ringing out. So let's demonstrate this real quick. See how it just keeps ringing out? Okay, and then watch over here, it's going to stop. Okay, so very important, very subtle, but something more important for people who are deeper into music production. Okay, let's talk about pitch bends. I'm going to demonstrate this on the 808. We're not going to go into about drill 808 slides. This video would take way too long, but I'll show you guys how to quickly do it. You copy a note, just hit Control up. I forgot about that shortcut. I'm glad we did this. Control up, hit Alt to grab the edges to make this smaller. We're going to make this smaller, and then double click on this note to make it what's called a slide note. So now this note will slide to this pitch over that amount of time. So the shorter the amount of time, the faster the pitch bend, the longer, you know, the opposite. Let's hear this in context. So that's how you get those wee 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 type 808s. I don't know why that one's like super loud. But basically that is, oh, there's two 808s stacked. Okay, so I'm glad that happened. This is meant to happen. So right here, I didn't realize I doubled the 808s. I don't know why FL allows this, but for whatever reason, you could stack notes without knowing it. But what happens is it subtly becomes brighter. So I didn't know I had notes stacked except for the volume. So sometimes you guys might record an overdub and have notes stacked and you have no idea. So just right click. If a volume gets randomly loud out of nowhere, just right click. And then it will give you the underlying note. So again, I don't know why FL's built that way. It's one of those quirks, but sometimes you might accidentally come up with something. Okay, so now these notes are sliding. You could hit Control up to pull these up another octave. And that's how people do this. Now, if I make this longer, it's going to take a longer time to slide from there, here to there. So it's going to, instead of, okay, so that's how you do pitch slides. I have separate videos on 808 slides. I just don't have time to go into like the nuances about how to make it sound perfect right now. I'm not trying to like, you know, shade anybody or whatever. So that's the slide note. Then we sliced the notes. We were kind of jumping ahead here. Next one is a piano roll script. So here, this is great for melodic stuff. What we're going to do is move back to the piano. And let's just assume that we played something like this. So let's use some shortcuts that I would actually use. So firstly, if I'm playing kind of stiffly, I would hit Alt-S to add some strum to the notes. Now you can overly do it to where it sounds fake. So the next step is not only strum the notes, we're going to grab the slice tool. You see these notes going over. We're going to hit Shift, right click, to get rid of the excess. Another thing we want to do is humanize these notes. So let's go to the tools. You have to download this from what's called the Image Line forums in their piano roll scripts. If you guys don't have the brain capacity to do that, I can understand it was a little complex, but you have to go to the Image Line forums, log in, go to the forum, and go to where it says piano roll scripts. Look for the humanize script. You might have to search for this one. These are made by users. So we're going to humanize this. I just want to show you guys what's possible. So what happens is it takes the notes, it shuffles them around and makes them more realistic. But the thing is now it introduces overlapping notes. If you guys can kind of see, I don't know if you guys can see on your screens. Let's make this bigger. But right here we have the two notes overlapping right in this area. And so it will cause a clash. So in the top right of your piano roll, the way I just did this, you could left click. There's a little zoom. It's not on screen, but in the top right, just under the X button, there's a little zoom thing. You just left click and drag, hit Alt click to restore. So that's how I just did that. I don't know if you could do it up here, but this also kind of zooms in and out. On Mac, I'm just using my trackpad. So right here, it will mute that G note and you will get an imperfect performance. So what we need to do is grab another script from the Image Line forums that's called remove overlaps. Just hit accept. So now it plays all the notes, but again, we have some overlap here. So we're going to grab that slice tool, hit shift, right click to get rid of that. So let me show you guys some ways to like alter chords, for example. So I'm glad all these happy mistakes are happening while showing you guys this video, because now you get to learn more. Let's say we want to take this bottom chord note, we hit Control, left click, and then what we could do is hit Shift to left click and duplicate. Very important because it keeps the timing and it keeps everything. Hit Control down. That will add another bass. Okay, and you can also highlight notes. Let's say you want to convert this from a minor chord to a major chord, for example. You could hit Control Shift left click to highlight different notes. And then we could hit Shift up or Shift down to move one note at a time. And now we can cycle between C major ninth and C minor ninth chords just like that. So I'm glad that actually happened that way. Now let's say you want to build more chords. They have a new, this is in the newer version, the newest version. It's called the chord progression tool here. Right click, edit. We're going to go to C minor, right click to keep this menu open, just right click, and then hit generate, and then hit play. And so there's a lot of things you could do with this. I'm not going to bore you guys to tears about every little thing about this. I already made a video about the FL Studio updates. If I remember, I'll link it below. I'm probably going to forget because I make so many videos, so I don't even want to lie to y'all. So let's go back to pattern 2 here. And we're going to use what are called chord stamps. So this is a great way to experiment here. In the top left, you have a stamp tool. We're going to click on the stamp. It gives you like the run-in-the-mill chords, the minor ninth, the minor seventh, major seventh. We're going to go to the advanced tab and click on something like a dominant ninth chord, for example, and introduce this in. Now, I'm not going to teach music theory right now. I just don't have time. You guys can go to busyworksbeats.com for all that. What we're going to do, see how these notes go over a little bit. We could grab that slice tool, hit shift, right click. And again, if I want the next note to be this length, I need to click on the note so that it remembers that length and all the details about the note. Hit Alt G to ungroup notes. And what I'm going to do here is do what's called a raise fifth and ninth, and then come back to C major. So I'm highlighting, hitting Control, Shift, left click, drag the chord back over. And what I'll do is I'll go from minor to major. So this is what we'll do. Okay, so that's how you can do cool stuff. Now we went out of key on purpose. Now if I had my scale lock on, we wouldn't be able to do this chord right here. Or actually we wouldn't be able to do our C major chord. So, okay, so moving forward, the chord stamps allow us to, add in chords from just borrowed chords, just any kind of chord, and experiment with finding you guys' sound. Another thing I didn't mention is the looping on top. If you control, you can left click and highlight up top and it will loop this area. So if you're recording, it won't keep going. And let's say you made like an 8-bar loop, an 8-bar piano. Let me just show you what I'm saying. Let's hit shift, grab that, drag it over. So let's say I'm like recording a melody over here and I don't want to record on this part. So I'm going to record right now. We're in C minor, I think, right? C minor. Let's do minor pentatonic. I'll show you guys more about my workflow as a beat maker. Not in this video, but I'm just showing you guys how to play with your typing keyboard. So let's say I only want to add melody on this side, not this side. Okay, so that wasn't the greatest take, but that's how you loop. You hit control or right click and just grab this bar. And just now it only records in that area or plays in this area. And again, if I feel like these notes are too stiff, highlight the computerized notes, add your piano roll script. Let's humanize this to add a timing bounce and a velocity bounce. There's no notes overlaps. And what we could also do is, let's say it's too loud in general, you could hit Alt X, pull down your multiply tool. So again, we could do a billion things from this point on. Let's just keep it on going down this list of things to show you guys. So I say here, what does it say? GVid timing adjust. I have no idea what my notes say. Oh, grid timing adjust. I already showed you guys earlier with the triplets, but basically if you change a snap to grid, let's say it's like 1/4, it gets more granular. It's not, in my opinion, it's not that good to draw on a super granular chart because it's going to be hard to understand timing and bounce. Unless you have to go granular, I wouldn't recommend always being on these like super granular ones because it's just so granular that it could just be confusing. But granular ones also help you unlock new timing and new bounces. So I'm not going to give you guys hard rules, just understand the way to adjust that. Change your snap to grid to, I usually keep mine on a half beat, or you can keep it on a quarter beat, and that usually does the job. Okay, so copy and paste piano roll notes. Okay, so here's like something that you guys might not understand. Let's go back to pattern 1. And actually, let's go to a new pattern. So let's just draw out an 808 pattern, an arbitrary pattern here. And let's say how do I explain this? Let's say I hit control, copy. And let's say I have a piano roll set up for my keyboard. Okay, so let's say for some reason I want to copy these notes over to the piano. You hit Control C and then you hit Control V and it doesn't do what you expect. It's going to copy what's called the channel rack sequence. And that's not what you might not want to do that. So what I'm saying is if we go into the piano roll and we try to do the reverse, copy these notes hitting Control C and we try to hit Control V on the 808, nothing happens. It's because we're trying to copy a piano roll sequence to a channel rack sequence. Very subtle, but in short, what you have to do is send this sequence to the piano roll in order to paste piano roll notes. So the only way to paste piano roll notes is to be in the piano roll. So if you have a sequence like in a drum pattern or something, and it's not sent to the piano roll, you won't be able to copy and paste into the piano roll. Hopefully that makes sense for somebody out there. Nextly, let's move to MIDI channels and pitch glide. So this only works with FL stock stuff. Let me put you guys onto a plugin that's super slept on. Here's the plugin here. And if you're on Mac and it doesn't open up the browser, I said that backwards. If it doesn't open up the presets, open up your browser and click here and it should open up. So I had to, for the longest time, I thought I couldn't use these plugins for that reason on Mac. So now that we have this open, let's click on something like a random patch. Okay, so let's go to a new pattern. Let's right click. Let's go through the workflow. We're in the piano roll. I usually keep my piano roll big. This is something I forgot to mention in the beginning. You can double click. I would highly recommend you make the piano roll full screen as much as you can. The smaller the piano roll, the harder it's going to be to use the piano roll. Okay, so now that we have this in here, let's just draw a chord. Let's do so you guys see how this is marked black. What we're going to do is go back to view Go back to scale highlighting, and we're going to make sure we have this on black notes only, so that we're only seeing the black notes as black. Trust me, over time, it will make sense. Okay. So we have A, let's just do a minor 7th chord. Okay, so let's say we want to do a pitch glide, but only for one note in this chord. Like, let's say we want to slide this C to this G. If I add a G and double click and make this a slide note, it slides every note that's playing at the same time. And that's not what I want to do. I only want to slide this note to that note. So what we're going to do is have to change out the MIDI channel for the note. This only works for image line stuff. Okay, so I don't want to teach you guys stuff that's really advanced. This is very advanced. Just double click on the note, change the color to a different color. I just recommend something that's dramatically different. So in this case, 5. We're going to double click on the slide note, make it the same color, 5. And now only, and I learned this from Synthit, shout out to Synthit. So only this note will slide to that note. It's a little, it's a little fast. Let me slow down. So now it's not sliding the entire chord, it's only sliding the top melodic note. So now you can make melodic runs and pitch bends that sound really cool without affecting the bottom chord. So again, I could sit here and make a whole melody, but that will waste time. But that's how you do it. Slide notes. So in FL Studio, if we double click and reset this back. Okay, now if you were to use a third-party plugin, it might not even trigger those notes because those are what are called MIDI channels. And again, I just don't have enough time to explain MIDI channels right now. But slide notes only work on stock plugins. They don't work on third-party plugins. So you guys can see there's a slide note here. Okay, now let's copy this. Remember, go to our channel rack, hit Control C. We're gonna hit Control V to paste it to the piano. Now, we won't hear the pitch bend on the piano because this is a third-party plugin by Spectrasonics called Keyscape. So this is not built by the stock DAW plugin developer. See how this note doesn't do anything? It's because for whatever reason, it just doesn't work on third-party plugins. So keep that in mind with pitch slides. I told you guys strum. I'll show you guys one more tool. And this is if you have a kick and an 808. So let's say you have an 808 bass line like this one. Okay, and you want that same pattern copied to a kick. I forget who showed me this. I want to say I've been Art. Forgive me for not remembering who showed this to me, or it might have been Sicky Beats. I can't remember exactly. I think it was Sicky actually. So hit Control C and then hit Control V to paste your 808 pattern into your kick. In this case, we're going to mute the 808. We're going to go into the kick piano roll. You can just left click to go inside. Hit Alt K and then go to key scale C. This should be on none. So click your drop down. None is way at the top. You guys can't see it. It's off frame. And then go to your thing should say middle C. So mine, I don't know how I got messed up. So let's go to C5. Where's C5? Here's C5. It's kind of weird on the screen. Okay, so you got to left click and drag and make sure that you're on C. It's highlighted, and you want to right click on C. Okay, so again, I don't know why that's super weird like this today. So make sure you left click the zone, pull it back to C, and then right click to C. Okay, so what this does is it will pull all those random notes to middle C. And in short, middle C is the note that triggers the default tune that you hear from your browser. So it plays the sample at the same speed that you hear it when you're picking your sounds, basically. So without that, it would just have random pitches, just like the 808. Now, because the kick, you know, it's a cool kick to where it doesn't sound terrible when it's pitched up and pitched down. But that's how you pull all those notes to one note. Okay, so that's how you do that. And again, shout out to, I believe Sicky Beats showed us that one. All right, so guys, you learned the piano roll. This has been a long journey, but trust me, you don't have to learn anything else in the piano roll unless you truly want to. Those are all the things you have to know about the piano roll. It's probably something I forgot. So let me know what I forgot in the comments below. Let's help the culture. And if you guys want to continue the FL Studio Bible series, just subscribe. It's completely for free. Go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. If you guys want to learn how to master FL Studio, I have a complete course on FL Studio 21 and how to master it. And I show you guys how to go from not knowing anything about FL Studio to learning how to make beats like the pros. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. You also get a ton of sounds for free, and there's so much more. Discord, I have tons of project files for free. It's so much in there that it's too much to explain. Subscribe if you're new. Peace.